Hi, Michelle. Thanks so much for making the time to catch up today. I really appreciate it.
Hi, Kristin. Good to see you again.
Here at CRV, and I think you and I talk about this often, which is, we invest in technology that gives power to the person, right? And we're more inspired by founders and entrepreneurs and businesses that can really, empower individuals. Who does Wheel empower and why?
We empower the clinician. We believe it's by investing in clinicians, it's the most direct way to impact the health of our country. And so that's why we show up every single day trying to affect clinicians and bringing them back to the center of healthcare.
Did you always want to be an entrepreneur? And how did you come to decide to start Wheel?
Well, I grew up in a rural part of Texas and unfortunately went undiagnosed with an autoimmune condition for over 15 years because I couldn't find access to the right doctor over time. And so with my kind of personal journey with healthcare and then seeing the potential for virtual care and telehealth to solve a lot of the issues that existed in the healthcare system, I knew I just couldn't turn away and not solve it.
Building in healthcare, and in particular, bringing new technology, new business models is no easy feat. What have been some of the toughest challenges you faced at Wheel?
I would say the toughest challenge early was just convincing people that there needed to be an entirely new way and infrastructure to work in healthcare. There's going to be a supply and demand imbalance. There's going to be a need for infrastructure in this industry. So when it was obvious to me in 2017 that this needed to happen, it was less obvious to everybody else. And not until 2020 did we see a lot of people saying, oh, this is obvious. We really need something to help clinicians work in an entirely new way where they've never been trained in that model. Oftentimes, they never even virtually treated a patient. So the biggest challenge was just convincing people that that needed to happen. Now, I would say the biggest challenge is just building at the pace of healthcare right now, but that's the most exciting part as well.
Tell me a little bit about just, some of the shifts that we've seen, because you and I started working together in 2019, and some of the opportunities we talked about were around, making clinicians' lives better, being able to give flexibility, and also towards digital health. What did 2020 do in terms of not only the pandemic, but behavior in the business that really accelerated what things Wheel could accomplish?
In 2018, 2019, when you and I were talking about it, it was we can make their lives easier, we can help them connect to this new way of work, and really help them accelerate their career in a new way. But we are still convincing not only investors of that, but also clinicians of that. And I think in 2020, we saw an incredible amount of clinicians come online for the first time, either out of necessity or want. We saw new specialties come online, but much like all of us who are in the workforce, there was challenges in 2020. First, remote work was entirely new to a lot of us. Then we had childcare go from being kind of in-person schooling and daycare to now being remote over Zoom. And clinicians are no different. They're, 70% of all of Wheel's clinicians are actually caregivers. So we saw this massive rush as well of clinicians who wanted to be with their family and had to be. So it was a really pivotal moment for all of the hypotheses that we had made is to actualize a lot of that. We're still working on a number of those things, but I think that's the really exciting piece is we saw the clinicians really come online and engage in an entirely new way.
What have been some of your proudest moments at Wheel?
Every week we have a deep dive with one clinician who talks to us about their experience not only with Wheel, but healthcare. And we've had a number of clinicians who said, that wheel has changed their lives completely. And that is incredibly humbling, from one thing. And then I think the other thing is just the team that's come along. And Kristin, when you and I started working together, I think we were like 10, 15 people. And then we've hired over 80 people since the pandemic started.
What are you thinking about now, and what are some of the challenges that you're facing? Kind of overarching all of this is, what's your advice for entrepreneurs?
I think first and foremost is that it is a journey, that it changes, and your role as a founder or as a CEO changes as well. I think actually that is where Chris and I talk quite a bit now, of like the evolution of my role. So when we first started and first met, I was very much still in the weeds. I was calling everything from clients to clinicians to doing the day-to-day. And I think you have to at the early days. There's just not enough people to do everything. I was even doing all the financials for a while, which is ridiculous and kind of funny now. But after, as you start to hire that team and really grow the people around you, it's really about how does your role evolve? How do you start to move from player to player coach to then just coach?
Yeah, one of the things I've always admired about you, and I've just gotten to see it in action in so many different elements, has been your ability to play both at the 3-foot level and at the 30,000-foot level, and gain and go down in altitude as the case may be and as the organization needs it. The running joke around entrepreneurship is, right, you sleep like a baby. You wake up several hours in the night crying. And yeah. So we'd love to hear, what are some of those things that keep you up at night now?
So I think a lot about hiring, as many CEOs do. I think a lot about how to, not only do I help the current state of the industry, but how do we bring more innovation over time, and how do we bring all of the stakeholders along in that journey. And then sometimes I just wake up in the middle of the night with this like, oh, there's this error in this one piece of this Excel file and I need to go change it right now. So it really much varies, but there's a lot of things that keep me up, but I'm also exhausted by the end of the day, so I sleep pretty well. I'm curious, Kristin, on your side, is there things that wake you up in the middle of the night about Wheel?
When I think about founders and when I think about leaders and what you embody in particular, but I think it can be extensible, is, are you a beacon, right? Are you a beacon for talent? Are you a beacon for customers? And are you a beacon for capital, right? Because with more capital, you can scale the company and have that broader impact that you want to have over time. And so, not only seeing you evolve through this journey, but also recognizing pretty early on that you were such a beacon. Not a whole lot keeps me up at night.
I know we like to compare notes often on what are you saying? What are you saying? And then try and digest that in a way that makes sense, not only for us as a business, but what does that mean for our partners? What does that mean for the industry? And if we can't do it and build it, who should be? And I think that's the really great position of where having an investor who's sitting kind of on the forefront of healthcare, and then having us in the background powering so much, how we get to compare and look at our notes together.
Michelle, who or what inspires you?
It really is RBG, because
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yes, yeah. So it's really her because of how much she took on so early in her life, and really sought to change something and never really backed down. Never really thought that, hey, I can't do this, or because it's going to be challenging and everybody else around me is going to push and say, no, you can't do that, that she would ever step away from the cause that she was fighting. And I hope one day that I get to have just a quarter of an impact that she's had.
Well, it's so, you can tell I've got a huge smile on my face. It's so funny you say that. I've actually haven't asked you this before, but one of the things that is sitting on my desk is actually a little RBG because my husband got it for me a couple years ago, and he's like, she's just like you, tiny but mighty. And when I think about you in particular, you're just a phenomenal person that's clearly making an impact, not only at Wheel, but hopefully across the industry. It's just been fantastic to be on this journey with you.
Thank you. It's been great. And now I know we were meant to be partners in this.